Hey guys, this is Vadim with Max Tech, and as you can see, I'm working from home right now for the next 2 weeks at least. I've got my little helper, Eugene, right over here. So I want to take a moment to thank you guys for watching our videos, hitting the like button, sharing it with other people. So without further ado, let's get into this comparison. So as you guys can see, we've got the 2020 iPad Pro right here. We've got the 2018 model, and in this video, we're going to be comparing basically everything we can between these two models: performance, speakers, microphones, and a bunch of other tests. So let's go ahead and unbox this guy right here, get rid of this plastic. Look at this beauty. We've got the silver model right here. Nice. First, I want to take some of this out. As you guys know, we get our 18-watt USB-C charger with our USB-C to USB-C charging cable right here. So as far as I know, everything on the front is literally identical. I'm not seeing any difference, no difference in the bezels, the display, reflectivity, everything is literally identical. As far as the layout of the buttons and the speakers, everything is identical here on top as well. No difference on the bottom with the port or with the speaker grills. So one tiny difference is that the new 2020 iPad Pro weighs a little bit more, 1.04 pounds compared to 1.03. Now that's probably due to some of the internals. I don't think that the metal has changed at all. I don't really feel a difference. Maybe it has. So hopefully nobody experiences bending issues with the 2020 model. Now the biggest difference we see right here is on the camera bump. So we've got this big square bump just like on the iPhone 11 Pro compared to this single little lens like on the iPhone XR. And as you guys can see, we have a brand new ultra wide lens right here and a LiDAR scanner, which we're gonna be testing both of those things later on in the video. Now, because of this square bump, Apple's smart keyboard for the 2018 model will not fit the 2020, so Apple came out with a brand new one that has the square bump cut out of it. But we actually prefer the Bridge Pro keyboard that we have right here. Now, because it doesn't cover the back, it has these hinges, so this technically will work perfectly fine with the 2020 model. Let's go ahead and try it out. We're just gonna grab this and slide it into these rubber hinge holders, and there you go. But the bigger deal is Apple's brand new Magic Keyboard that's gonna be coming out in May. It actually packs a trackpad built in, and it actually makes the iPad float, which is really nice. There's also the Bridge Pro Plus, which also comes with the trackpad that's gonna be coming out soon as well. Now, both of those trackpads are gonna be used for Apple's brand new cursor support in iPadOS 13.4, which actually supports both the 2018 and the 2020 and a bunch of other iPad models. We've actually made a full guide on that cursor support that you can check out after this video if you're interested. The new iPad Pro is actually exactly the same thickness, 5.9 millimeters, same as the 2018 model. But what's interesting is that the new iPad Pro actually has a slightly smaller battery. Now, I don't think that's gonna make much of a difference for battery life because it does have a new A12Z chip, which I think is more efficient, so you're gonna get the same battery life. We'll talk about that chip in just a minute. Now let's go ahead and power this new iPad Pro on. So what's pretty sweet is on our 2018 model, we got this little pop-up allowing us to set up the iPad using the Apple ID. Apple didn't mention any differences in the Face ID speed, so we're gonna go ahead and set it up and we're gonna see if it's faster. All right, once again, 2020 right here, 2018 right over here. Let's go ahead, turn them off, and we're gonna be trying out Face ID speed. Literally identical. Once again, literally no differences in Face ID as expected. So as far as I know, the displays haven't changed one bit. You've got the same great LCD display, laminated, very low reflectivity. Now, as far as the display brightness, it should be the same, but just in case, I'm gonna go ahead and check out the maximum brightness. They're both maxed out right here. We've got the Google homepage, and as far as I can tell, they look identical, no differences in brightness. They look very, very bright, 600 nits. Now, of course, both of these iPad Pros have ProMotion technology, which means the display refreshes at up to 120 Hertz. So everything's gonna be super smooth and snappy on the home screen, browsing the web, or using apps which support 120 FPS. And it also goes down dynamically to 24 Hertz if you're watching a video that was shot at 24 FPS. So with that, let's get into our speaker comparison between the 2020 and the 2018 model to see if there are any differences or improvements in the speakers. Now let's move on to the camera comparison. Now both of these still have a 12 megapixel main camera, so you guys are looking at shots using the main camera on both of these. Let me know if there are any differences. But of course, the 2020 model gets the ultra-wide camera, so here are some shots using the ultra-wide. Let me know how they look. I personally think this is a great addition, even though not that many people use their iPads to take photos. I personally love the ultra-wide camera. I use it a lot on my iPhone. So kudos to Apple for adding that on the 2020 model. Now the selfie camera didn't change, but one difference I'm noticing between these portrait photos is that my shirt is not blurred out on the 2020 model, which is pretty interesting. Now one thing that's new on the 2020 model is the studio microphones. Apple said the microphones should be sounding better, so let's compare them. This is a microphone quality test on the 2018 iPad Pro. This is a microphone quality test on the 2020 iPad Pro. Now before we get into our performance comparison, I want to test out the brand new LiDAR scanner, which is right there. This is going to greatly help out depth sensing, which is very useful for augmented reality. So we're going to go ahead and test out some of those apps. Here's an app called the Birdcage. It has an AR mode. So let's go ahead and test that out. So I can place this birdcage wherever I want. So let's place it right here, as you guys can see. You can adjust the height, and as far as tracking, seems to be doing pretty well on the 2018 model. Now moving over to the 2020 iPad Pro, I'm not noticing much of a difference. Actually, here's one difference. As soon as I move away from the table, it instantly knows that it's going over carpet, and it matches the size perfectly, just like that, right? But here we are back on the 2018 model, and when you go over carpet, it actually starts glitching out. You see that? It doesn't realize that you're going over carpet, so the depth tracking, look at that, it still doesn't really know where it's at. Going back to the 2020, look at that, instantly snaps into place, and it actually knows how far it is away, and it gets much smaller. The birdcage gets smaller. Yeah, the depth sensing is definitely better with the LiDAR on the 2020 iPad Pro. Now, I don't know how big of a deal this is going to be to a lot of people, especially right now. We're going to have to wait on a lot more AR apps to come out. But for now, there isn't really that big of a demand for really good AR hardware. So with that, let's jump right into our performance comparison between these two. The 2018 iPad Pro has the A12X chip compared to the A12Z chip in the 2020 iPad Pro. So Apple chose not to switch to the A13X, which means there probably isn't that big of a difference in performance, but we'll test it out. And one more thing to note is that the 2020 model has 6 gigabytes of RAM compared to 4 on the 2018 iPad Pro, unless you get 1 terabyte of storage. So we're gonna start off our testing with Geekbench 5's CPU test. So we got our scores right here, and it looks like they're basically identical. This is within a margin of error for both the single core and the multi-core scores. So let's jump into the Metal test. So in Metal, we're actually seeing a slight improvement for the 2020 iPad Pro, about 690 points. So that obviously isn't that big of a difference. So let's go ahead and run some other benchmarks like Antutu. Here are the scores for Antutu, and as we can see, we have a little bit better performance with the iPad Pro. Looking at the CPU scores, they're basically identical. The GPU actually did go up just a little bit, and so did the memory, so that's the 6 gigs compared to the 4 gigs. Let's also test Antutu's HTML5 test to see if there's any browsing speed differences. And here are the results for that, basically identical in the HTML5 test. Now there's one last thing I want to test for performance, and that's video editing export time with Adobe Rush. So I have an old 4K HEVC 60 FPS project loaded on both of these, so let's export them and see the time difference. So as you guys can see right here, the 2018 iPad is actually a little bit quicker for this export. It finished 7 seconds quicker than the 2020 iPad Pro. Now this didn't really make much sense considering that we were seeing a little bit more performance on the 2020 model, but realistically, there's basically no difference in performance between the 2018 and the 2020 iPad Pro. Now, one thing Apple did mention is that they did improve the thermal performance of the 2020 model, so that's going to help for tasks like long-term video gaming sessions, which we actually are going to try, so make sure you're subscribed if you aren't already. Now, one interesting feature you get with the 2020 model is Wi-Fi 6 support, which you don't get on the 2018, so let's go ahead and test the internet download speed. Now, even though we don't have a Wi-Fi 6 router, we're gonna go ahead and see if we get a more reliable connection on the 2020 model. Look at that, 68.8 megabits per second on the 2020 iPad Pro. And for the upload speed, it's basically the same at 6.39 to 6.57 megabits per second. So I ran the test one more time to be sure, and yet we're getting over double the download speed on the 2020 iPad Pro. So if you're worried about Wi-Fi speeds, the 2020 model is definitely the way to go. Now, before we get into our conclusion on which one you should buy between these two models, I want to mention the prices and the specs. Both of these retail for $800. The only difference is that the 2018 model came with 64 gigabytes of storage, and this one comes with 128 gigs. And of course, you get the other features like Wi-Fi 6, the extra camera, you get the LiDAR sensor, better microphone, so that's actually a pretty good deal. The 2018 model is actually on sale right now on Amazon for $674, but I'd say that's not that great of a deal. If it was maybe $600, I would recommend it over the 2020 model, but remember that you're getting double the storage with this one for $800, brand new, and the extra features. So with all that said, let's get into our final conclusion. Now, we didn't see much of a performance difference, and that's because the 2018 iPad Pro was already overkill for the apps that are available on the App Store, and to be honest, the performance is still overkill today, so that's why we're not seeing that big of a jump, because it honestly didn't really need it. But my personal opinion on the 2020 iPad Pro is that it's even more future-proof than before. That's because it has the extra cameras. It's got the LiDAR sensor for better augmented reality for the future when we start seeing better augmented reality apps. But overall, what I would say is that if you already have the 2018 iPad Pro, absolutely do not upgrade. There is not that many changes with the new model. But if you're choosing between these two, I would definitely recommend going with the new 2020 iPad Pro for the extra future proofing, the extra storage. For the price, is definitely a better deal and a better choice. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this comparison. If you did, tap that like button below and click the circle above to subscribe, and check out one of those two videos right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.